Hello, welcome or welcome back to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela and all the places you can find me should be linked in the description box below this video. Here on the channel you'll find me chatting about my adventures in knitting, spinning, crochet, weaving, all of the fibre related things. I have a spinning and probably knitting video to share with you today. I am going to be doing another video where I take something from fibre to finished objects, so from fluff to stuff. This is going to be my entry for the lovely Alex of Late Night Knits is holding a bats to hats knit along. So this is fluff to stuff, bats to hats. So yeah, I thought I'd take you through my project as I progress. Yeah, let's get started by sharing the fibre with you. I picked up this set of bats in a fibre sale, specifically with this project in mind, this bats to hats project in mind. So this is a bat trio, 150 grams of fibre from Velvet and Sixpence, and I'm not sure off the top of my head, I don't think it doesn't say obviously on the label here what this fibre is. I purchased this set of 3 bats, sorry for the shining and the crinkling because they're still in their packaging. So 50 grams of this beautiful sort of red colour, the yellow and this deep sort of navy blue. My plan is to spin these up and maybe knit a colourwork hat or something which involves 2 or maybe all 3 of these colours. I'm hoping to make these projects, or spin these projects I should say, on my e-spinner. I will be hoping to spin long draw from these bats, but I've not actually spun long draw bat often, if at all, on my e-spinner. I have most often spun long draw on either my support spindles or my treadle wheel. Now my treadle wheel at the moment has another project on it. I'm going to start spinning this, and these 3 bats are kind of my practice spin, so practice long draw on my e-spinner to see how I get on with it. Hey lovelies, it's time to get started with this project. I've been procrastinating on it for far too long. Bank holiday here today in the UK, the end of August, and I am going to sit and see if I can spin through at least one of my bats today. It's pyjama day today, so you'll have to excuse that, but you're used to it here on the channel. So yeah, I'm going to open up this pack of bats finally and get started. I am still cogitating on what pattern I might use for these, but I can't put this off any longer. I'm just going to spin and see what yarn I get and try and choose my pattern afterwards, I think. Yeah, time to unwrap these and get stuck in. My first attempt at long draw on the e-spinner too, so we'll see how that goes. Keep your fingers crossed for me. Now this bat is out of the bag, it's even more beautiful than it looked in the packet. There are tones of purple and blue and some sort of deep purpley black colours. I'm going to just strip the bat down and spin it. Or maybe I could make some faux lags because I'm enjoying spinning from Rolags so much. So basically, if you're not aware of a faux lag, basically the idea is you can strip your bat down and then roll your little bits of fibre up into Rolag shape. Something I've not done before, the faux lags, so that will also be a fun experiment too. I'm about a third of the way through my bat now and getting used to spinning on the e-spinner in the long draw style was a little tricky. I am going to admit that. I think it's to do, again, as I've said before in videos where I mentioned my e-spinner, it's that constant speed. You don't get to slow things down to make adjustments in the same way that you would on a treader wheel. Yeah, it took a little while to get my setup right. I've turned the speed to sort of medium or on the slightly slower side. Seems to be working well, so not the fastest spin, but it's given me time to allow myself to draft out the yarn and get enough twist in that before I wind it onto the bobbin. I found that if I had a higher tension, it was just pulling out of my hands too fast, but I'm really pleased with how this is turning out now. And for some reason, when I was thinking about these bats, in my head, I thought this sort of darkest colour was a navy blue. I don't know why that was. I don't know if I just looked at it in sort of low light in the plastic packaging and just thought it was blue, but it's this really lovely rich purple colour with sort of an undertone of black. I didn't give much thought as to how I was going to ply the yarn or what I was going to do with it when I first started spinning, but I've decided I'm just going to two-ply it. So I have pulled off the sort of remaining bit of the first half of my yarn. I'm going to continue spinning that to this bobbin, and then once I've got through this I will obviously swap to a second bobbin. Yeah, just really enjoying it. I'll tell you who's not that interested. Hey Newty, what are you doing? Newty. See what I mean? She couldn't care less. Good morning, or good whatever time of the day you're watching this. It's morning for me. Thought I'd check in and let you know my progress on my spinning yesterday. So I managed to spin the first half of the lovely purple fibre, and I've started on the second bobbin too. That's on my e-spinner at the moment, so I'll show you that in a minute. And I've got the rest of that fibre prepped up into those faux lag, so yeah, I'm ready to go with the second half of the purple. I think I have found a project. I've picked myself out two options, both hats from Woolly Wormhead. I've got a 4-ply option and a sport weight option. My yarn is it's looking quite fine at the moment, the singles. Given what usually happens when I wash it, it'll probably puff up a bit because I tend to experience that quite often. My default tends to be a sport weight yarn, so yeah, I've picked out a couple of patterns just in case. I'm hoping if I get the right weight yarn that I'm going to be combining the purple with this fabulous yellow bat. Yeah, I'm going to keep spinning and then I'll chat more about the patterns once the yarn's finished and I know exactly what I've got. Last night I finished the second half of my bat for my Bats to Hats project. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this yarn turns out. I feel like I've got a little bit more on the first bobbin, but I didn't weigh the bat out and split it. I just kind of split it as I went on, so yeah, it's probably bound to be the case. I also feel like the second half I didn't spin quite as consistently as the first half, but hey, that's okay. We shall find out what the final yarn will bring. So yeah, I'm going to get this plied up today, and then hopefully over the next day or so I will start figuring out which hat pattern I can make, and in the meantime I'll also start spinning up the yellow bat. Making progress, having fun. Seem to be doing nothing but sat in the same place for this vlog, but it's just my e-spinner's on the floor down here and this is where I tend to spin. but I wanted to pop in and show you I have finished my first skein of yarn for this project. As predicted, it's around about a sport weight, so I think because it's quite a nice light and airy yarn, I think it will probably knit anywhere between a 4-ply and a DK gauge. I've got about 150-ish meters just over in this 50-gram skein, so yeah, I'm really pleased with how this has turned out, and I might wind it up and start swatching for a couple of the different hat pattern possibilities while I'm spinning the second colour. So I'm going to get on and start spinning the yellow bat now, and will of course aim to try and get the same sort of consistency as for this purple skein. But yeah, the project is starting to progress. Morning lovelies, we're back in this e-spinning spot. It's Sunday morning and I'm going to ply my yellow yarn. I think it's maybe about a week or so since I started the spinning of this. Maybe I started it at the beginning of the week, I've lost track now. And I wasn't expecting to get this spun up last night, but James put on the Avengers Infinity War movie, which we've watched before. And so we watched that, and then it got to the end and he's like, well, let's watch Endgame now. And it was like 10:30 at night, and I'm like, isn't that 3 hours long? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, stay up till 1:30 like I'm young again. Used to be a night owl, but I am in bed a bit earlier these days, but not massively early, but yeah. Luckily it's Sunday, but I think today's going to be a struggle. Anyway, the bonus was I got my single spun up for the yellow yarn, and I also finished knitting the sleeve on my sweater project, so yeah, it wasn't all bad. Anyway, stop waffling, start plying, let's get this yarn finished so we can get to the knitting, which I'm really excited about. Wound on to the Niddy Noddy. Not quite as happy with this yarn as the lovely purple yarn. It's a little bit coarser. I'm not sure what the fibres are in this bat trio. It doesn't say it on the label. I'll have to see if I can look back through my Etsy receipts and see if there was anything on the listing for it. It was not quite as enjoyable to spin either. The long draw was much harder to maintain. The fibre was either getting sort of under twisted or over twisted. It just wasn't drafting back as nicely as the purple, but I'm hoping it might soften up slightly with the soak. As I say, the fibre's a bit more coarse than the purple, and I think this yarn might be a touch thicker than the purple, but hopefully they'll still play well together, and for a hat a little bit of coarseness won't make too much difference. Not in my spinning spot. That makes a big change for this vlog, but that of course means I have yarn. Actually, I was hoping, wasn't I, earlier in this vlog to get swatching with the purple yarn while I was making the yellow, but in the end I ended up finishing the yellow much more quickly than I thought I was going to. I'm much happier with this yellow now that it's been soaked and set. It is still a touch bit coarser to the touch than the purple, but it's not as bad as it felt when it first came off the wheel. This did turn out slightly thicker, I think, than the purple, but I'm still hopeful that these will play quite nicely together. I need to purchase my pattern now. It's the 6th of September as I'm recording this, and Woolly Wormhead, who I want to purchase the pattern from, has a new pattern release coming in the next few days, and I really want to purchase that new pattern too. So I'm in two minds as to whether just to hang on and purchase them all together. I mean, it doesn't really make that much difference, but I've got some other things to keep me busy, so it's not like I'm in want of a project to make. See, it will just depend on how long I can resist temptation, but my yarn is done. I've just pulled the trigger. I've downloaded the Woolly Wormhead pattern that I'm hoping to knit. It's the Echo pattern. Put those up because there was a reflection on my glasses, but then made my hair go super crazy. Confession, haven't brushed my hair today. Standard. So yeah, pattern is downloaded. It's a beautiful day here in South Wales today, and I have not got too much work related stuff on today, so I think I'm going to take my yarns upstairs in a minute and wind them up. I need to do some final calculations on my sort of approximate meterage just to make sure that I'm going to be okay for the pattern, and then yeah, can get casting on. Somewhat frustratingly, but not altogether unpredicted, I don't have as much yellow yarn as is called for in the pattern, but I think I'm going to plough on and see how far I get. My thought is I could always fade something in at the top of the hat if I need to, or maybe make some adjustments along the way to make it work. And my measuring of handspun is never 100% accurate anyway. I often have a bit more left over than I thought I might because, like I say, inaccurate measurements. I'm hoping to get a counter. I've backed the Dreaming Robots yarn counter, but that won't be here until at some point next year, but I think that will really help me being able to choose projects for my handspun. For now, I'm going to get this wound up and cast on and see where I get to. I was going to take it upstairs and wind it on the ball winder, but it's a lovely day and I want to sit outside, so I'm going to do it by hand, and although it'll be a bit slower, it'll be all part of the process, and I will enjoy spending more time with this yarn. There's just something so satisfying about knitting corrugated rib. The colours and the yarns are playing quite nicely together. The yellow doesn't seem hugely thicker than the purple as I'm knitting it, but obviously in the meterage count it certainly is, so yeah, we'll just have to keep an eye on it and see how things go. But I think I am going to stop knitting for a little while. It's almost 4:30 now, so I think I'm actually going to grab my book and get out of the shade and sit in the sun for the last bit of the sunny day, because we are forecast for rain for the next couple of days, so as lovely as it is to sit in the shade, it'd be nice to get some vitamin D while I still have the opportunity. And when I'm sat in the sun, I don't know what it is, I like to physically read my book. I've been knitting and listening to my audiobook, so yeah, I've got an audiobook and a physical book on the go usually. So yeah, time to change things up a bit, and I'll come back to this later on this evening. Morning lovelies, I thought I'd catch you up with where I got to on my hat yesterday evening. Here is my progress. So I finished obviously the brim, I put in the braid, and I've started on the colour work. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this is working up. The yellow is definitely going down at a quicker rate of knots than the purple. Just going to keep going with this and see how far I get. The whole hat now is 66 rows long and I'm 6 rows in, so there's still a fair way to go. I think I'm going to be working on this relatively slowly. Because that yellow yarn is a little bit thicker, this is working up at quite a tight gauge. The pattern is at a fairly tight gauge anyway for the weight of yarn, so it's a sport weight yarn, and there are 2 options for sizing. The sizes are changed by the gauge basically, so you can, or the pattern recommends that you can knit the hat with a 2.5mm needle or a 2.75. So I'm going for the 2.75, which should give me a slightly larger hat, but also helps with the tightness of the gauge and this yarn, like I say, the yellow yarn in particular. But because it's still pretty tight and my yellow yarn is probably verging on DK in a few places rather than sport, it's fairly hard work on my hands with the colour work and the tight gauge. So I think I'm going to take a slow approach to this project and just try and knit sort of 6 to 10 rows per day, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks the project will be finished. So won't be the quickest hat knit in the world, but hopefully that will take care of my hands and my wrists, and we'll have a nice hat at the end of it, touch wood. It's been a few days since I checked in for this knitting and spinning vlog, so I thought I would catch you up with where I'm at with my hat. Poet, and she doesn't know it. I have managed to knit the first pattern repeat of the Echo hat, which is a pattern by Woolly Wormhead, and I don't know if you saw my little look of shock there. I've managed to pull a bunch of stitches off of the needles as I got this out of the bag, even though I had my lovely Knit Pro metal tube protecting my work. As soon as I pulled this out, I pulled off the protector and then I stretched out my needles. Why did I do that? Gonna rescue these stitches and come back. Ah. Okay, fortunately that wasn't too horrendous. I have put the tube back on the end of the needles to hopefully stop that happening again. So take 2. Here is my hat progress. So yes, I think I was saying this is the Echo pattern by Woolly Wormhead, and I'm just really enjoying it. I finished the first pattern repeat. The pattern repeat is 19 rows long, and you basically repeat the pattern twice, and then in the sort of third repeat of the pattern you are working a modified repeat because you start to decrease for the crown of the hat. It's the first week of September, the beginning of, and I'd kind of hoped that I would have finished my Echo hat by now, but over the last week or so I have been very lax. I haven't worked on it at all for a couple of reasons. A couple of other projects kind of bumped to the queue, and also at some point last week I must have slept funny because I've been having a little bit of neck and shoulder pain, so I haven't generally knit as much as I usually do. So I think, yeah, I'm just over the 1.5 pattern repeat stage of this hat. I think I was somewhere down here last time you saw this. So yeah, I'm still really enjoying working on this, and I'd really like to get it finished by the end of this week if I can. I'm still not sure yet whether I'm going to need to substitute in some yarn for this yellow. As you can definitely see now, the yellow's gone down a lot faster than this purple, which still reads as quite blue, I think, particularly in the knitted object, but I like the combination of colours. So yeah, I want to crack on with the knitting to see if I am going to need to either spin some more yarn from some other fibre, or see if I've got something in my stash that I might be able to substitute in for the top. So I've got maybe sort of 10-15 rows before I start the crown decrease. So I'm hoping maybe I'll get to at least that point today. I'm going to try and put some effort into it. It's a lovely day here in South Wales. The forecast for this week was kind of rain all the way, but it's quite breezy, quite blowy outside, but the sun's out. So I'm on my lunch break from work at the moment, so I'm thinking I might take this outside and try and knit 2 or 3 rows before I get back into work this afternoon, and then hopefully that will set me up and get me back into working on this project again. check in on this project. I'm running to a time crunch now because it's really only a few days until this make along finishes, and I've been sat procrastinating on it as always. Well, that's not entirely true. We went for a weekend family visiting, and then I've been on catch up ever since then. So my knitting, spinning, crocheting, all of that stuff has been really slow over the last week or so. But that's a-okay. I'm almost done with this project. However, I'm also almost out of yarn. So let me share. So this is my hat. Let's just take the tube off that's protecting the stitches, slip that in the bag, and then try not to scooch the stitches off the needles. So I have knit to the point where I start the decreases, and this pattern has some quite rapid decreases. I think I've got about 15 or so rows left, and then the hat is finished. I'm really so happy with how this hat is looking, but it's been a real joy working with these two colours of my handspun. So yeah, I'm at the point where I've got maybe about 15 rows left, but I'm also at the point where I'm going to run out of yarn. Are we surprised? Not really. So this, I've still got plenty of the purpley colour left, but this is all I've got left of the yellow. So yeah, it could be a bit of an issue. I do have a couple of backup options already sorted out just in case. The hat does have a rapid decrease pattern, so the rows are going to get shorter quite quickly, but I'm still a bit on the fence as to whether my little nugget of yarn is actually going to stretch to the end of the hat. So I'm going to keep, hang on, let me just get a bit organised, otherwise my stitches will be flying off. I'm going to pop my tube back on, and then I'm going to put the hat back in the bag for now, but I'm going to keep my little nugget of yellow yarn to hand, and I'll show you my options that I've picked out for backup. So I've been rooting through my handspun sort of stash, leftovers, bits and pieces, and I came across these leftovers, which were from a braid of fibre that I spun up from the lovely Attic Spin Dye in the Tropical Sunset colourway, and I used the rest of this yarn for a pair of socks. And I have sort of some small quantities left. The bits I'm most interested in are, let me just get rid of that little ball. So I ended up with one bobbin that had a little bit of fibre left on it, which I chain plied. So I have this few metres of this lovely yellow. Sorry, the camera's not going to focus. I'll stick my hand in front of this at the moment, but it coordinates quite nicely with the yellow in the ball. So let me just lay a couple of strands over the top, and then I will get the camera to focus on in. So yeah, as you can see, the two strands here are mixing quite nicely. They're not exact match. They're a bit more yellowy, whereas this has got sort of a bit more sort of tonality to it. But I've got a few metres of yellow on this little mini skein that I could snip off and use, which is sort of plan A. Also, from the leftovers of this yarn, I've got this little nugget, and the outside is very variegated, as you can see, but I've got this bit in the centre, which is definitely more yellow. It's not quite, keep dropping these things, it's not quite as good a match as the sort of previous, but let me just, it's not showing up. It looks quite good on the camera, but it's a bit more orangey than yellowy. But I've also got a good few metres in the centre of the ball there to use. So I'm hoping between those two small quantities, if I do run out, I'll have just enough to finish the crown. I managed to get some way through the decreases for my Echo hat. I stopped knitting last night, yesterday evening, when I ran out of yellow yarn. It was going to happen, wasn't it? So I think I've got about 13 rows left, but as I mentioned in the previous clip, the decreases at the top of the hat are quite rapid. If I show you where we are now, I've got this teeny tiny little bit of yellow yarn left, but there's quite a few less stitches. I'm not in danger of them popping off the end of the needle as I was yesterday when I first started decreasing. So yeah, it was bound to happen. I was hoping the yarn might last slightly longer than it actually did. what I ended up doing last night was winding off the sort of yellow bits from the 2 balls that I showed from the Attic spin die spin and the Tropical Sunset spin that I did maybe even last year, but definitely some months ago. So yeah, this evening I'm going to work on getting this hat off the needles, and hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to show you what it looks like. Fingers crossed. Good morning, lovelies. It's Sunday. I've just got up, so crazy hair, tired eyes, scruffiness all round. You know the drill. But I wanted to show you I've finished my Echo hat, and I did manage to work it all in my hand spun yarn. You can see the colour change at the top there. I'm getting ready to block this, but I don't think when I'm wearing this it will make a huge difference that the top of the hat is slightly different, and it is much more distinct on the camera than it is in real life. So yeah, I'm so excited. I need, as I say, to block this to sort of stretch out the colour work a little bit, but I'll pop it on. It's got a reasonable bit of slouch to it, which is really nice. I'm getting a little bit of flipping up of the brim, but that was my own fault for not following the pattern correctly. So yeah, time to give this a block. The sun is shining today, and I'm gonna hopefully be able to get this outside to dry, and yeah, have a finished hat to wear. Hats and glasses. Yeah, a bit of slouch. Could use it as a sleep mask if I needed to. Right, let's stop messing around. Go and get this in to soak. It's finished. My hat is blocked and ready to wear. And yes, I have accidentally, maybe intentionally, made a hat that matches my love note perfectly. Happy accident, definitely not intended. So here is my Echo hat, and I'm fairly happy with how it's turned out. There's a few things I would definitely change. The first is, way back at the start I would have read the pattern properly and put in that first row that I should have put in, which would probably have prevented some of the sort of flipping up issue that I was getting, and probably will get as I wear this. I also maybe would have spun another lot of yarn to try and get something that matched a little bit better in terms of thickness with the purple yarn, because the hat is quite dense, although there's no problem with that. But I think that's also added to my colour work not being super neat, because the yellow is much more prominent than the sort of purple blue yarn. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and I will definitely wear it, and I am pleased with how it has turned out. I tried to deal with the flip up issue by employing some pegs as I was blocking this. So what I did was I pegged the brim out sort of together flat to try and train the hat to be flat right at the bottom of the brim there, which has worked somewhat, but I think as I wear the hat, that bottom bit of the brim will probably flip up and show the colour work underneath, but hey, that's just the way it goes. This also took ages to dry because I was drying it flat rather than over a plate or a balloon. Obviously the hat is colour work, which makes it double thickness anyway, and then on top of that I was laying one side on top of the other, so there were lots of layers of fabric when I had it out to dry. But all okay, and it is finished now, so let's try and pop this on. So the hat has a nice little bit of slouchiness to it. I cannot see what you're seeing, but hopefully you can see something okay. I guess I'll find out when I edit. But yeah, fits really nicely. It's got that nice amount of slouch to it, and it's going to be super warm, so this will definitely be a hat that I wear on those really cold days because of the extra thickness from the colour work and also that nice thick woolly yarn, particularly the yellow. I finished just in time. The Batster hat make along finishes tomorrow, I think, as I'm recording this. So yeah, I cut it a bit fine, or perhaps I timed it perfectly. I shall let you decide. The hat did take me quite a lot longer than I anticipated it would. The spinning was actually the quickest part, and then the knitting was quite slow, but again that was just because of gauge issues and the thickness of the yarn that I was using for the hat. But we got there in the end. Ooh, I'm going to take this off because it's making me too hot. Obviously I did have to change the colour at the end of the hat, but I don't think it looks too bad, and I think it looks somewhat intentional because it's right at the top of the hat, and for the most part you're not really going to see that when I'm wearing it, or I certainly won't. So yeah, a perfectly wearable, lovely knit, and I really enjoyed the woolly wormhead pattern. If you've not knit a woolly wormhead hat before, I highly recommend. Their patterns are just fantastic, and there's always something fun in there, whether it be a colourwork pattern or just a fun technique. They're just great patterns. I want to say a huge thank you to the lovely Alex of Late Night Knits, and I'll link Alex's channel below, for hosting the Batster hats and allowing me to play around with Fiverr and have an excuse to go on this journey, and I had so much fun with it. Yeah, it was just a great idea, and I hope you will host the knit along again at some point, Alex, because I will definitely join in. So we've come to the end of the video finally. I think I started back in August. It's now mid-October. For a hat that seems a little bit excessive, but hey, that's life. I hope that nonetheless you have enjoyed the video, and I'll be back again soon here on the channel with some more making content, so I hope you will join me for the next video. But until we do get to spend time together again, I hope you get to do some of the things that you enjoy. Great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now.